Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's 11 o'clock here in New York. You guys are probably calling from around the country. We're going to give it a couple minutes to let people join. But as people are trickling in here, would love to hear some intros in the chat. Maybe your name, where you're from, and what beverage you're drinking this morning. I have already finished my cup of coffee, so I need to get a refill as our presentation here gets started. But yeah, please go ahead and put here in the chat your name, where you're from, and also what beverage you're drinking this morning. And as people trickle in, we'll get started. If you're wondering where you are here for an IT compliance and HIPAA compliance training, specifically tailored to new ABA practice owners. We'll be starting here in a few minutes. Joshua says an orange Celsius. That stuff's pretty gross, but I'm glad you like it. I'm going to add our presenter, Derek, here to the stream so you can see him too. We're going to give it a couple more minutes here. So say hi to the chat, your name, your state, and what beverage you're drinking this morning. And we'll get started in a few minutes here. How are you, Derek?
I am great. Can you hear me okay?
I think so. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm a tea drinker myself.
Tea drinker.
The occasional coffee, but mostly tea.
I tried to switch off of coffee. I was doing really good for 3-4 months of the year, and then it got busy, and then it all went to crap. But maybe next New Year's I'll be able to stick with it a little bit more.
Yeah, I go through my cycles, I guess, of like, extreme fitness and getting in shape and losing weight, and I can quit everything, right? I can just walk away from everything and I'm fine. It doesn't really bother me. Carbs, sugar, any of it, right? But I tried about 4 years ago to quit caffeine, and I realized, like, okay, this is my problem. Like, this is the one thing that I cannot do without, like, because I mean, it was like a week of just misery. And I gave up. I started just drinking, a half a pot of coffee every day, like right back into it. But it is funny because you do get like a little bit of a cleanse, and then when you start back on it, like a cup of coffee actually means something. It's not just something you do. Like, you actually get energy from it.
Like a ritual.
It's out of your system a little bit. But yeah, I have to have tea all the time.
Makes total sense. We have some hellos here in the chat. Oh, hey Lydia, good to see you. From Florida, drinking water. Lots of waters here. Green from Georgia needs coffee. I do too. I'm gonna get some too. Tommy from Arkansas. Very cool. We just talked to a BCBA out there. Chai latte, single shot. I would get a double shot, honestly, if I were you. And then Lindsay from Pennsylvania, just water. 5 after the hour here. This is a publicly available link you're on. So copy and paste it into your text groups, into a Facebook group near you, and get some more people in to learn more about HIPAA compliance. But I'm going to start with a quick intro about myself and then pass it over to our presenter today. So first, my name is Michael. I'm one of the founders at Alpaca Health, where we help BCBAs start, launch, and grow their independent ABA practices. We do everything non-clinical. So we credential and contract you under our group contracts with favorable rates. We run your practice, scheduling, billing, all of that we do for you, verification of benefits, being on hold with insurance. We provide you with an all-in-one technology platform. It has scheduling and data collection, but also payroll, intake, and billing all in one. And I think the most important part, if you're just starting out, is we get you paid. So you don't have to have a huge amount of money in the bank, savings. We get you paid every 2 weeks. So you'll always have enough money in the bank to pay yourself and to pay your BTs, even if insurance delays their payments. And so the idea is we take away all the risk of running an ABA practice, all the risk of dealing with insurance, and all the administrative headaches so that BCBAs out there can start a business, but really stay focused on the clinical mission that led you to get into the field, that lead you to deliver such awesome, high quality clinical care. This is a webinar series we're doing. It's totally informational, going through everything from credentialing to accounting. We're doing a webinar next week about tax deductions to just give some information to BCBAs about how to start their practices. So if this is your first webinar, welcome. Thank you for joining. If it's your second or third, thanks for continuing to stay on with us. And if you have any questions about how to start your practice, please feel free to reach out to myself or the Alpaca team. But I'm going to hand it over to Derek, who has an awesome presentation for us about HIPAA, IT compliance, and really making sure that you're thinking about having a compliant, secure, help keep patient records private and confidential type of practice from day one. So really excited to have him on here, and I'll just pass it over to him to give a presentation. Derek, I think you're on mute.
Well, that helps. So just to give a little bit of background on myself and my relationship with Michael, Michael and I connected on mission, and our mission is to help ABA owners stay independent. We're on the side of the clinical ownership. There's this big shift that's happened in the ABA market, and it continues to move towards large, big box ABA companies, private equity backed organizations getting in, and I call them profit pirates, right? They're going in, they're going after the money. And one of the things that Michael and I really connected on is our heart for the BCBA entrepreneur, or at least clinical entrepreneur. I know some people are RBTs and want to start their business, but if you're starting it for the right reasons and you're really there to help the kiddos, we're on your side. And that's where Michael and I really hit it off. And, Alpaca Health is coming in from one direction, helping with all the back end administrative stuff. And one of my companies is WOM Technology Management Group, and we provide cybersecurity, IT services, and compliance management on a granular level for real small business ABA companies. We've recently launched earlier this year our learning management platform for business training and business education, basically giving you the tools that you need to build your ABA business and be successful and compete with the big private equity companies. So thank you for being here today. This is not about compliance in general and our presentation today. It's about protecting your practice. We're not here to scare you. We're here to make the compliance program at your company. Number one, we want it to exist. And number two, we want it to be simple and affordable and manageable. So you don't need to be a tech expert. You don't have to go back to MIT and get a degree in technology to actually be compliant. You can do this yourself, and you can manage this and be in control of it. So this should be an empowering experience to you, not an overwhelming experience. So I'm going to blast through these slides as quickly as I can, because I want to make sure that we have some time at the end for some Q&A. But I want to cover some of the common things on what's happening now and what this actually means for you and what you can do about it. And just keep in your mind that compliance isn't just about HIPAA and your state laws and checking these boxes. It's about running a sustainable, ethical, and well-governed business. And this is what our goal for you is. This is how you gain success and sustainability in the ABA market, not just being compliant, meeting the bare minimums. So most of you are doing everything. We're CEOs, we're business owners. So we have to wear a lot of hats. You're dealing with clinical outcomes, hiring, billing, insurance, and now we've got HIPAA in there. And Alpaca is taking care of a lot of the things on the back end, like our billing and our contracts and all that good stuff. But there's a lot that we still have to manage as business owners, and we still need to make sure that we're managing these as functional areas of our business. We don't want to have our entire company and everything that we're investing into our business reliant on one provider. So you always want to have a contingency plan for everything. And you didn't become a BCBA to manage servers. You didn't become a BCBA so that you could go out and deal with contracts like what Michael and his team are taking care of with you. So, but odds are you're going to be wearing at least 5-10 hats at your company. You're the chief this officer, the chief that officer, along with being the chief executive officer. So the good news is on the compliance side is that you are not expected to do everything today. You don't need to fix everything in your business. There are some major things you want to make sure you don't fall victim to, but you don't have to go from 0 to 100 on the compliance scale overnight. That's not the goal here. So we want to show you how to make real progress one step at a time and make sure that your business is protected. This isn't about more work. This is about getting more out of what you already have and then making incremental changes as you go. So think of your body, your business rather, as a human body. So each organ or each system has a specific role. You have your clinical, your operations, HR, finance, tech, ethics, compliance. All of those programs are organs within your organization. And compliance is one of those, and it's a major one. And in programs like if you got a master's in business administration, or if you go through our blueprint courses with ABA Impact, we refer to these organs in your business as functional areas. And all of them are interconnected. Each depends on all of the others. And you can't ignore one without damaging your business in some way, because they're all tied together. And today we're going to zoom in specifically on the functional area of compliance. But remember that this impacts everything: your clinical decisions, your tools that you're using for technology, your staff behavior, your company culture, how you handle your billing and your finance, your communications. Literally everything touches compliance and is affected by your compliance program. And we're not going for perfection here. We're looking for incremental alignment and awareness, and you making adjustments over time and filling gaps as you go. So we like to do what we call tabletop exercises. And this is actually a requirement for the HIPAA HHS security risk assessment. So we have to go through a tabletop exercise. And usually when some people hear that, they think, they're picturing the war room at the Pentagon, and there's generals standing around a table with the pieces out like a big chessboard under these dark lights, these bright lights in this dark room. And it's this scary kind of thing. And you think, I got 3 or 4 employees. I'm a BCBA and I'm doing solo direct service. Like, I don't need to do tabletop exercises. Well, they're not that complex, but they are extremely important. And that's why they're required. A tabletop exercise is just thinking through a scenario. And as you're building your systems in your business, these are the types of scenarios that you want to think through. So imagine for this exercise that your practice management system is down. It's inaccessible. And things happen like this all the time. It could be a ransomware. It could just be a system outage. There are very large companies like if you Google CDK Global, this is the kind of the practice management system for the auto industry that runs all the dealerships. So Ford, General Motors, Toyota, all the big ones. CDK Global is probably in itself larger than all of the companies that are in the ABA service provider market combined. So their system went down. It was down for about 6 weeks, I believe it was. And you couldn't go to the GM dealership, Chevy, Cadillac, any of the Ford dealerships, Toyota. You couldn't even get an oil change, much less buy a car or get tires, right? So you couldn't do anything during this time frame at an auto dealership, and billions were lost. And now the auto industry is doing this as a tabletop exercise. They're paying attention to what happens if these systems go down. What do you do first? Who is it that you call? What is your team going to experience? What are your clients going to experience? These are the kind of things that you want to think about And when you get beyond that, you want to think about what the regulators want. And what they want is documentation and response. They want you to be prepared to handle these kinds of things. Now, that comes from a compliance standpoint. From a business standpoint, as an owner, you're thinking about when this bad thing happens, how do I go from 100% performance to 60% performance, say? It's still going to be a rough time, right? But when you're in a town or in a service area where you're going from 100% performance to 40% or 60% performance, but your competition goes to zero, this is how you end up quickly growing and adding BCBAs and RBTs who are leaving other companies and coming to a place that is still at least operational, right? So this isn't just important for your business from a compliance standpoint. It's important from a financial and business continuity standpoint. In these situations, your clients really want transparency and reassurance. There's a bad thing that happened. This is how it's affecting us. This is how we're getting through it. And this is what you can expect over the next, over the coming weeks or months, however long this thing is going to take. So if you're the company that is prepared for this kind of thing and you can handle it well, it sets you apart as one of those standout companies, a high performance company. And to get there, you really just need a plan. You don't need a bunch of fancy tools or a lot, you don't need to hire a full-time person to come in and just manage this for you. You just need a plan, and that's free. It's a pen, it's a piece of paper, or it's a Word document. You can sit down and you can make your plan and make sure that you have a safety net there at that 40 or 60% mark where your performance is only going to fall so far. All right, so things to consider specifically around the data loss prevention site. Please understand what your state laws are for record retention for minors. I talk to people who are on the state board for their the health compliance boards for their state, right? So one was Pennsylvania. There's 11 people in the whole state who are on this board. And one of them I was talking to, and I asked how long they're keeping their records for. And she said 7 years. Okay. I believe in Pennsylvania, the rule is 5 years after the age of majority, right? So that puts it at 23 years. So what that means for ABA, we're often dealing with minors almost all the time. So what we want to look at is when we have a client who comes in and they're of a certain age group, how long do we need to make sure that we retain their records for? Because they can come back anytime in that retention period and ask for their records. And if you don't have them, you're now liable for those records. It can be sued, you can be fined, you can be shut down for not retaining your records properly. So the number one thing is know what your state requirements are and make sure that you have a plan to keep all of that data that's not dependent on one provider safe for at least that period of time. When we're looking at these situations, we want to look at it through the different lenses, right? And we teach this in our blueprint series. So as you're building out your systems, your clinical model, your operations, your technology decisions that you're making, as you're building these things out, you want to look at them through all the lenses. So we talked about those functional areas, the organs of your company. And every time you build something, you want to look at it through the compliance lens. Is this going to meet our state requirements? Is this going to meet HIPAA requirements? Is this going to meet the requirements in our payer contracts? Because that can change things as well. If you have a situation where if you're working with Medicaid in your state might require you to provide records within a certain period of time when a client requests them. So HIPAA will say 30 days and refer to your state. Your state could say you need to provide them within 14 business days or 15 business days. And often we see people going to a law firm, having them write up their policies and procedures before they have their payer contracts. All of those policies and procedures are written, and then they get a payer contract. Their policies are written for 10 days. The payer contract says 5 days. Now all of your policies and procedures are wrong. So these are things that you really want to make sure that you're building yourself and looking through all those lenses. So in a situation where we have our tabletop exercise for data loss prevention, you cannot access your practice management system. You want to consider, how are we going to continue to operate? How are we going to make sure that if we never get back in, that we still have those records somewhere else? And how are we going to make sure that we are compliant while we're doing that with state, federal, and payer requirements? So let's zoom out a little bit and talk about what's happening in the industry and healthcare and ABA in general. These are not hypothetical situations. These are actual real breaches with real costs, and it falls on small business. A couple of scenarios that we've had recently are Anthem, Community Health Systems, and the Change Healthcare. I think Change was probably the most well-known one in the ABA market, but Anthem they got a $16 million fine. And this is, about 1 million records, or at least a few 100,000 records were exposed due to just simple failures in their protection systems. Community Health Systems had a bunch of records that were stolen. And this is basically just a really good example of how easy it is for a bad guy to get into these large systems. They're a big target because they have a lot of data. The small businesses are a big target because they're low security and still have a large amount of data. Remember that if you're in any kind of pediatric services in healthcare, you generally have at least double and usually triple PHI. You have the kiddo, at least one parent, that's double, usually two parents, that would be triple. So you have all three of those individuals' PHI in your systems. Bad guys know that, and they also know that small businesses have lower security standards and they're easier to get into. So cyber crime has evolved pretty drastically over the last 20 years. So it used to be, viruses on computers, people playing pranks or just seeing if they can get into a system. Now we have to deal with AI-driven attacks. Can you guys hear me okay? Looks like I just disconnected and came back on.
I could hear you okay, Derek.
Okay, cool. It just popped up, said I lost connection. So things are evolving, right? Viruses, simple stuff in the early days. Now we've got AI that can pretend that it's your grandmother. So it's a very complex world that we live in now. And that goes, ransomware, deep fakes, and most small businesses have what we refer to as tech debt or security debt, right? Our business is doing the same thing it was 10 or 15 years ago, and the whole world is changing around us. So going through our blueprint series of courses on ABA Impact, we teach this concept that is the world is moving. If your business is standing still, the world is going to roll over you, right? So you want to make sure that you're always making incremental progress in all these areas. But most businesses in general, across all industries, have not kept pace with the changes in cybercrime. And the other side of this is we also have a pretty big experience gap in the cybersecurity field. So we've got a lot of people that, everybody's got less than 10 years of experience that are coming in. So we have the old school guys and gals that are all retiring, and then we have the new people coming in, and there's a gap between them where either you have a ton of old experience or very little new experience. So it's a challenge to even find people to work for you in the cybersecurity industry. So let's talk about managing our vendors. So we are only as secure as the vendors that we work with. So the more we trust them, the more we're depending on them to be secure on their side. Now, I want to talk about a law firm, but this evolves into an ABA-related issue. So one mistake, even outside of your practice, can still impact you and your clients. And this is what we refer to as upstream or downstream risk, right? So the risk that's upstream from you is happening at your vendors or other people outside of your company. And if they have an issue and that becomes your issue, it can affect the people or vendors downstream from you, which could be vendors or clients that get those hacked emails from your hacked account, right? So this is a situation that we dealt with last quarter of 2023. So this is a company that we did a risk assessment for, made recommendations, wasn't in the budget, and about a year later, November of 2023, 2023, they circled back with us and said, we've got this issue. So they had a lawyer, and law firms are a pretty big target for cyber criminals because the bad guys like to get into their case information and then use that to extort the attorney, right? Like if it's a family lawyer like this one was, they say, hey, we've got all of your records, and then we know who the soon-to-be X is, and we can take all of your records and give it to them if you don't pay us $1 million, right? It's a big extortion ring. So, but they have options, right? They can do multiple things. Once they hack somebody, they can extort the lawyer, like what I just described. They can hack the lawyer's clients, or some combination of both of those. So the way you want to protect yourself here is making sure that you're asking questions before you're signing with the provider, making sure that if you're going to work with somebody, that they're paying attention to this and they're at least aware of the risks. Do they have cyber liability insurance? Have they done a recent risk assessment? Any of these companies that you work with that are providing any kind of software, they're going to have all this stuff readily available for you. But if you're working with a smaller provider, make sure that even your dentist that you go to personally, ask them what they're doing to secure your data. People vote with their wallets, and people listen to what their clients say. So when you're talking to your dentist and you ask them about what they're doing about their security, once 2 or 3 people start asking them, maybe they'll start thinking about it. But this is the raw materials for identity theft. So when these bad guys get this data, they turn around and sell it on these dark web markets and make tons of money off of it, because PHI is extremely valuable because you have so much information about those clients. So when this law firm got taken down, they were extorted. And when the bad guys got in, they saw all their contacts, and they have the same kind of CRM and market research tools that regular companies have, right? It's an industry. Cybercrime is its own industry. They have their own infrastructure in their system. So when they go through their contacts, they research who these people are. They found one ABA company, a big 3-location company, and decided to target them as a downstream target once they figured out who they were, right? 3 locations, they got 60 or so employees. They do a little bit of research online and figure out that this lawyer is the divorce attorney for one of the owners of this ABA company. So let's talk a little bit about the data loss prevention side, right? So we're talking about the lawyer. These are our providers on this end, but I want to shift just for a minute to our actual systems that we're using for data storage, right? So we're talking about a bad thing that can happen, but this is an example of a bad thing that can happen that doesn't require anybody doing anything malicious. And it's also a good moment to talk about managing our SaaS providers, right? Like our practice management systems, our healthcare management systems, whatever you have that has any kind of PHI on it or anything that's valuable to your business. This is actually what happened to my IT company, Word of Mouth, WOM. February of 2024, Josh, who's also on this call with us, called me. I'm in an airport, I'm traveling. He said, I can't get into any of our contracts. It's not loading up. I'm doing something wrong. He ran it by one of our help desk technicians, and that ended up at our CTO's desk, our chief technology officer. And then I get another phone call about 40 minutes later saying, hey, all of our contracts with all of our customers, all of our leases, our fleet vehicle purchases, everything is gone. Adobe's response is they escalated it about 3 levels up until they finally just said, hey, our bad. So sorry, lost all your data. Their terms and conditions say that they're not responsible for any of this. So our entire business is basically gone. All of our value is gone. All of our legal protections are gone. And Adobe says, my bad. Luckily, we don't trust these types of providers, so we have backups of everything. So we had those redundancies built in, and it was a struggle for a couple days to get all of our contracts gathered up again. And we left Adobe and went to another provider. Now, so we got these two different types of threats coming from two different types of providers, and we'll get into a little bit deeper what the lawyer caused at this ABA company. So this is the family law group that was captured and extorted, and this led to a business email compromise at this ABA company. The law firm's emails were hacked. They were aware of case numbers, everything about this ABA owner's case with their ex who was not paying alimony. They sent an email that was being drafted by the lawyer regarding a motion for contempt of court, right? Because this person's not paying their alimony. So they're making a motion for contempt of court. So it had her case number on it, had an attachment that showed the motion. They knew what the lawyer was about to send to her. So they figured she was probably expecting it. But when she got the email from the lawyer, it went through their spam filters because he's a known sender. He's on the whitelist, right? And she's on her personal computer the Monday before Thanksgiving on vacation. She's on her personal computer and she's trying to open this attachment, and it's not opening because it's not actually the motion. It's installing bad software on her computer that is allowing the bad guys to steal stuff from her, right? In the meantime, they were doing a transition from Rethink to CentralReach, and they had a bunch of data downloaded on this computer, her personal unprotected computer outside of the company. She's clicking on an attachment that looks like it's from a clean email. The attachment won't open. There was also a OneDrive link in the email that she clicked on, put in her OneDrive Microsoft 365 login. She was the administrator for this Microsoft 365 account. They were kind of self-managing their IT. So when the bad guy got in, they got everything on her computer. They got her administrative login. She did not have multi-factor authentication set up, and they took everything in this business's Microsoft 365 and in their CentralReach. So this is a major exposure, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but I'll just put it this way. January 19th of the following year, Agent Travis Jones with the IC3 division from the West Palm Beach FBI office showed up at my office, wanting to have a conversation about their investigation into this company. So it became a pretty serious thing. That company, last I heard, had shrunk from 3 locations down to 1. Major catastrophic impact just from somebody getting into their email and from them working with a provider who wasn't very careful with their own security. So this is just a scenario to think about and consider what you're doing on your end to make sure that you're securing your company against impacts like this. So here's a quick rundown of how we come in and analyze a business and decide how we can actually start to protect, reduce, and transfer risk in this business. So when we come in and we do a financial impact analysis, there's a couple things that we want to consider. You know, I talked before about that reduction in performance or production. Going from 100% to 60% is better than going to 0%, right? How long the business will be disrupted depends on what redundant systems you have in place, right? When CDK Global went down, I have a very strong belief this is going to happen in the ABA market soon. We're due for a major outage for one of our practice management systems somewhere. So the key is you can't prevent it. We need to make sure that we're planning for it, right? So depending on how long that system is down for will determine what the actual days of disruption are, right? Sometimes we can control that. Sometimes we can't control that. One thing that we can control as business owners is our percentage of lost production. So making sure that we have a redundant system in place where we can continue to operate. We can continue to bring in session notes and do our data collection on paper if one of our technology systems doesn't work. What we teach in the Blueprint courses is how to build your systems within your business to run without any of your any of your superchargers or your performance increasers like practice management and billing systems, right? So you want to design as much of your business to run without those things as possible, and then add those things as performance enhancers, not making your business dependent on them. So this will give us an idea of what our lost revenue is if we know that we're not going to be able to do certain things for a certain period of time. We know that revenue will be lost or at least delayed. If you can't keep your employees working, you're going to have lost labor. If you don't want your employees to leave and go work elsewhere during this outage, you're going to need to continue to pay them, right? And this is where I tell businesses, having a plan for this when a major outage happens that affects you and other providers in the area is going to enable you to move your business forward. It's going to be a tough time, but if you're able to continue operations, this is where other companies who can't are going to lose their employees and hopefully end up working for you, right? So there should be an opportunity to move your business forward as the chaos is happening around you. Below this white line is what it costs to actually investigate an incident and notify people. So depending on your state, it's usually around 500 records. 500 records sounds like a lot, but it's nothing. Businesses that have been in business for 1 year and have one email mailbox get hacked usually break through that 500 record limit pretty quickly. So this is when you're automatically going to be adding in incident investigations that start at $60,000, notification and crisis management that start at $90,000. Then you can start tacking on your regulatory fines, your penalties from the state, from the Office of Civil Rights through HIPAA, and then you've got potential class action lawsuits where clients could get together and sue you. And I think it's 10 or 12 people. They all get in contact with one another, and they all go out to a lawyer together. Now you've got a class action lawsuit. So it's definitely something you want to avoid, but this is where you want to do your math and figure out exactly what your exposures are. Number one, so you can reduce risk in the appropriate areas and bring these costs down as low as you can. And then number two, know what your insurance coverage should be if you're doing all the right things and then the bad thing happens anyway, right? So knowing what is actually going to cost your business so that you can have the appropriate amount of coverage. As a quick note, I'm not telling you to go out and get cyber liability insurance. Most businesses don't actually qualify for those policies. They'll sell you a policy, but when you need it, they find a reason to not cover you. So there's a lot that you can do yourself to reduce the risk and severity, the impact and severity rather, before you go out and get an insurance policy. All right, so along those lines, drop in the chat, A, B, C, or D. What do you think is the average cost of a data breach? Now, this is not considering HIPAA covered entities. This is just small business. We don't have numbers on HIPAA. HIPAA is a whole different ball of wax. But this is just for the average US-based small business to deal with a data breach. What do you think the average is? Nicole says B, 1 million doll hairs. Anybody else? All right, the average is $4.5 million. The average cyber liability insurance policy is usually around $1 million. And that's where we do those financial breakdowns for people. And we say, usually yes, Nicole, that is a lot of doll hairs. So you want to make sure that you have your actual cost, your financial exposure calculated so you can cover your business the right way. The lowest I've seen, and getting back to the one account, 1 year in business, pretty low exposure. The lowest I've seen was a $225,000 response. That was for a non-HIPAA covered entity. This is for a pool contractor. I'm sorry, a kitchen and bathroom contractor. So we do get calls outside of the ABA industry to do incident responses from time to time. This young lady had the idea that if she just didn't keep a whole lot of money in her company bank account, that she would be fine. But when her QuickBooks Online got hacked, they got $13,000 overdrafted her account, And then she thought that was a bad day. Then she later figured out that, nope, this is going to cost another 200 grand because they got all the records from your QuickBooks. So this is what you want to keep in consideration. These are low numbers because they're not HIPAA. There's not a lot of data out there for actual HIPAA covered entities. But when you start tacking on fines and higher obligations for reporting, you can imagine where these numbers go pretty quickly. So let's talk a little bit about the CLI insurance, or the CLI rather. You want to make sure that eventually you get a cyber liability insurance policy. But basically what your cyber liability insurance policy is going to require is that you're HIPAA compliant first. So if they find anything that's out of compliance with HIPAA, they're going to wash their hands of you, right? So they'll sell you a policy and take your money. But this whole game in the insurance market is about bringing money in, not putting money out. Right. So they're going to find a reason to not pay out on a policy if they're able to legally. So let's break down a couple of ways that they do that. And I know some of you are, most of you probably, it's nearly impossible to get insurance in the ABA market anyway. So most of you guys are probably with CPH, I'm guessing. So tell me if I'm wrong. If there's any other providers besides CPH, or if you're using CPH, drop that in the chat. I'd be interested to learn more about that. But CPH is one of the common ones that we see. They have a cyber liability insurance add-on that's $15,000. And it's like $90 a year or something like that, right? Yeah, Nicole said they're the cheapest, right? So it's difficult to get ABA and therapists, ABA therapy. It's difficult to get insurance for your ABA therapy business already. And then here's another one that you really want to have covered as well, right? So CPH has the $15,000, but as you can see from our numbers of the actual cost of these breaches, that is a drop in the bucket. So we're probably going to need to look eventually at getting a separate policy for you. Once you have your risk managed, everything's kind of tightened down and you're handling it internally, then you can transfer that risk out. So here's some ways that cyber liability insurance companies will not pay, right? So this is an example of the CLI add-on for your CPH policy. So this is taken directly from there. So usually there's a $1 million, $3 million aggregate, and basically a security event, any of that stuff, it's going to be capped at $15,000. How do we not pay your claim when you call us and tell us you had a problem? Well, they put exclusions in their policies. So this is how they read. It's pretty simple. This is the game. Collect premiums, pay claims as little as possible, right? And they put pretty vague stuff in their policies, like letter D here, the middle one. Failure to ensure the computer system is reasonably protected by security practices and systems maintenance procedures. They can argue that in court all day long. Like they have lawyers that they have trained to argue this point, right? So even when you get a lawyer to go represent you, or you feel like it's not fair that they're denying your claim, you're going up against, it's a David and Goliath situation here, right? So you want to make sure that you are exceeding the requirements of your CLI policy before you actually go and pay for one. And as a quick note, I think CPH is it's like less than $90 to add on the $15,000 thing. So I wouldn't go through the trouble of canceling that if you already have it, but definitely don't bother adding it on unless you have everything aligned and you're doing your SRAs and you have a really solid compliance program in place. Another thing they like to do, so we're talking about claim denials here, and this is something that started happening a lot. Cyber liability insurance policies have only been around for about the last 15 to 17 years. And they started to get a really bad rap because, number one, when it first came out, the insurance companies started paying out tons and tons of money. They said, wait, we got to stop this. We got to stop paying out so many claims. So we need to start putting in ways that we can deny claims. Then they started getting a bad rap because they were just denying claims. At one point, I saw a statistic that said it was 9 out of 10 claims are getting denied for cyber liability insurance claims. So they got smart. We're not going to deny claims outright. We're just going to reduce coverage limits. So this is one of the ways that they do that. This isn't specifically from CPH, but this is an example of the period of neglect table for one of the cyber liability insurance companies. So this has specifically to do with your patch management. So those updates and patches on all your devices, you have to make sure that you're updating everything, because these are the update limits and patch limits. If you're 0 to 45 days, you have full coverage for $1 million. But as soon as something gets past 45 days, even if it has nothing to do with your incident, they can lower your limit to 750, all the way down. If they can find one device or one piece of software on one computer that hasn't been updated in a year, they can drop you from $1 million all the way down to 100,000. So this is how they're protecting themselves financially without actually denying claims. All right. We just had Sam Bryant. Sam is a ABA-focused attorney who obviously deals with a lot of HIPAA stuff. He came on our ABA Business Challenges group and did a talk about your BAA and the relationship of your company with your providers and how all that kind of works in HIPAA, right? Now, HIPAA has a part of it that's called high tech, right? And that's what our team specializes in at WOM. We really zoom in on the technology side of things, but then also with, don't leave paper laying out on your desk. Make sure you have locks on your doors. So we do step into the physical privacy and data protection stuff as well. But it was interesting to hear Sam's breakdown on the tiers. So I'll try to do it justice here. Basically, tier 4 is $50,000 to $100,000 per violation. And it's up to a $1.5 million annual cap. So they'll stop it at 1.5 million. Isn't that nice of them? So they'll max you out at 1.5 million. So I'm sure most of us have at least 3 or 4 million in our bank accounts. We could probably just write a check and take care of that, right? So I know you can sense the sarcasm there. So tier 4 is willful neglect. This is for companies that just aren't doing crap. Right? Like, we're not doing anything we didn't know, we're just clueless, we haven't done anything, we're letting everybody use personal devices, whatever. And these are basically the people that the auditor, who has their own judgment that they're allowed to use. It's pretty subjective. They can kind of sit down and go through your audit, your paperwork, your policies, and all that stuff. And the auditor kind of just decides, this bureaucrat is going to decide what tier your business belongs in. So what you want to do is make sure that you're not in tier 4 with the $50,000 to $100,000 per violation fines. Stay away from that $1.5 million cap. And like I said, we're not talking about perfection here. We're talking about reasonable progress, some due diligence, right? Let's get your business into tier 1 or tier 2 as quickly as possible and get ourselves, comfortably tier 2, hopefully in tier 1, where we can make sure that we're not at a business ending audit, right? Or a business ending event. So getting from tier 4 to tier 1 is not as difficult as you might think. So these are the common violations that we see in ABA. How many of you guys are doing in-home? There's probably not a lot of clinic-based here. How many of you guys have a clinic? Let's just go at it that way. And then how many of you guys are in-home? Just post clinic or in-home in the chat. I'm interested to know. So we see a lot of these across different therapy settings, but some of them are specific. Right? So group text and sharing logins is one that happens across the board. For in-home, the use of parents' Wi-Fi, right? I call it mom and dad's Wi-Fi. Mom and dad's Wi-Fi will take your business down, and it'll take it down quickly, right? So this is something you want to make sure that you're paying attention to. It costs a lot more money to secure a device to make it secure enough to use on mom and dad's Wi-Fi. Costs more than just getting a data plan, right? To take a personal device that one of your RBTs or RBAIs or BTs, whatever you're calling your frontline employees that are going and doing those in-home services, it actually costs more to secure their device than it does to just get them one that you have control over, right? So I know that sounds that doesn't sound realistic, but when you can go to Verizon and get an iPad that's brand new, a data plan for that iPad, you can get mobile device management from a company like ours for $5. You're going to spend $30 a month on an iPad with the data plan and all that stuff, where you're going to spend about $50-$60 a month securing one of your employees' devices or securing one of your own devices to use on Wi-Fi. So happy to talk to you about that. We'll give you our contact info at the end. But these are the types of things that we see in ABA companies where it seems like an innocent shortcut. But these are things that are going to catch up with everyone eventually. So the quick action wins that you can take and go apply in these different areas are: enforce multi-factor authentication everywhere, right? That is that second thing that you need besides a password. So you have your username, you have your password, you need to have something else to allow you into that account. I prefer using the authenticator apps over text message or email, because text and email can get hacked pretty easily. So using your Google Authenticator if you're on Google Workspace, using the Microsoft Authenticator if you're on Microsoft, there's a lot of authenticator apps that you can use. They're free. This is one easy way to do that. Creating a password policy. Sit down and write a password policy. You're going to see this on a future slide. It's required by HIPAA anyway. So you can jump on, and if you go through the Blueprint courses, we teach you how to build your own ChatGPT system to help you build things like this in the context of your business. So create a password policy, distribute it to your employees, have them sign and acknowledge it, and put it in your compliance folder and keep that there. Telling them this is how a password should be created, this is how often it should be updated, and then worry about actually enforcing that later, right? And then designate a compliance officer. Make someone in your company, even if it's you, make them responsible for your compliance program. Give them a little program they can start working and doing, where they can go into your systems and look and make sure that multi-factor authentication is enforced. Make sure that password policies are actually being adhered to. And make sure that everybody has access to what they should have access to and doesn't have access to what they shouldn't have access to. Old employees are deleted, their access is terminated. Create a log, some kind of spreadsheet, and give that responsibility to the compliance officer. Even if it's you, we're talking 1 hour every 3 months or every month. This is not a big time commitment, but it shows that you're doing something, incremental progress. That's something you take away from this call for free, and try to use it to get yourself from that tier 4 into tier 1 or 2. So this is what you need for an audit. And this is kind of getting back to your compliance officer, right? So when you have an audit, they're going to want to see a few components. And policy requires evidence that that policy is being adhered to. So when they come in, they ask you for your password policy, like I just mentioned. You want to have that policy that's already written. You want to have evidence or proof that that policy is actually being adhered to. So like screenshots from your Google Workspace or your Microsoft that all users are required to have multi-factor authentication. Screenshots from your Alpaca account logins that show that multi-factor authentication is required. Or maybe it's not an option. I'm not sure exactly how they have that set up, but it might be required naturally. So you can show that too. Having logs where your systems are being checked by your compliance officer. Date, name, the system they audited, what their findings were, what they changed. Maybe everything was good. Make a note there and continue on with that. And then the fourth and final thing on this list is the POAM, plan of action and milestones. At least having a plan where you have gaps that you've identified. And that's really the fifth thing that should be on this slide, but we'll talk about the SRA in a future slide. But really having that gap analysis where you actually do the risk assessment that we're required to do, having a third party look at it, identify those gaps, and then your plan of action and milestones is just your map of those problems and when you're going to take care of them. I'm going to keep cruising here because I know we're running short on time. If you want to start an SRA, this is what's required by HHS. You can hit that. You can hit that QR code, and I'll leave that up there for just a second while I'm talking about the next slide. There are about 17 policies that are required by HIPAA. So you want to make sure that you have all these policies written. Like I said, if you're going through the blueprint courses, we actually build your executive assistant GPT with you, show you how to set that up, and that can help you generate a lot of these. So hopefully everybody got that QR code. If you want to do that and have us help you with any of it, like there's no commitment. We're happy to jump on a call with you and go through that with you. So this is a quick shot of the policies. It's public information. You can look this up and make sure that you have your policies kind of outlined in your company, and go through the blueprint course. The foundation course is free. Jump in there, get that done, and go through and create all these policies using your GPT in conjunction with the actual context of your company. So make sure that you have, we kind of like to use the behavioral skills training, right? So make sure that you're instructing, that you're modeling your system, show what secure behavior looks like, teach your team, and then making sure that your staff is rehearsing this and doing it in ways that are low stake, right? Like having little drills, having a 3-day period at the end of a week where you're not using your practice management system. You are doing everything on paper. So real quick, we're going to go through what you want to make sure you recognize as a phishing email. So the biggest things are what your misspellings, urgent or overly emotional language. They want to hit your emotional triggers and get you to click on them. So anytime you feel rushed to click an email, don't click it. Always give yourself 20 seconds. Teach your team this. If they feel the need to click on an email and it's pulling them in, give it 20 seconds, especially if there's a link or an attachment. How are we doing on time, Michael?
We are a few minutes away from the hour. I think we're 11:58 now.
Okay. I can skip this tabletop exercise, just kind of summarize it because I want to get into the SaaS stuff. So this is another tabletop exercise you can do, but I would focus on the practice management system tabletop exercise. What if you lose access? I would focus on that. Ransomware can happen, but really it's about having redundancy in your system. So let's talk about our SaaS providers that are out there. This is not because providers are evil. There are terms and conditions that they have to put out there to their clients to keep them safe. But I'm going to click through a couple slides pretty quickly here, but if you see those purple words at the top of this slide, if you summarize all the terms and conditions for all the SaaS providers from practice management, Google, Microsoft, Zoho Mail, any of the cloud data storage, any of the providers that you work with, those 3 purple words at the top is what you really need to remember. You are responsible. Microsoft can lose all of your data. Adobe can lose all of your data. Their practice management system can lose all of your data, and they are not responsible. You are. So this is why you want to make sure that you have redundancy built into your systems, that even when something else goes down, that your company's future is not dependent on it. You want to make sure that you have all of these bases covered, right? So Aloha ABA, all the way down to Hierasmus, and Microsoft and Google, they're all the same. So these are a couple things that you just want to avoid. Neglecting risk assessments, get those SRAs done. Self-assess quarterly, have a third party come in annually. That will keep you covered and aware of what your gaps are. The second big one is not having staff training or reinforcement. The biggest breaches happen from a single slip up from a single employee. That is your first line of defense. So make sure that your employees are trained, and don't look at your HIPAA as an annual requirement, right? Don't meet the HIPAA requirements. Educate your team. Make it part of your culture, right? We do it with weekly micro trainings, little 3 or 4 minute videos. Instead of slamming everybody with an hour or 2 of HIPAA education that's going to go in one ear and out the other at the end of the year, like make it part of your company culture. Split it up. Have it always be part of every staff meeting, every team gathering, right? Number 3, not having your written information security program. That's that list of policies we talked about. So make sure that you have those and that you write them as things are, right? Write your policy and make sure that you're enforcing it, that you have evidence of it, right? And the biggest policy, the most important one for you and your business to really work out is your incident response plan. At least know who you're going to call, at least know what systems that you're going to use while an incident is happening. And number 4, not having a data loss prevention strategy will kill your business. So somebody else losing your data, you having no control over it and no way to get it back. So strong policies, make sure you have the security awareness training in place, incident response planning. And then once you have all of that and you're passing your SRAs with flying colors and you're not finding any gaps, that's when you get cyber liability insurance. Zero trust is simple. It's trust but verify. Like if I might be aging myself, but back in the Reagan days, right? We don't trust anybody. We always assume that it's something bad coming into the network until we verify that it's not bad. So this is how you handle things like email security. Assume that every email is a bad email, open it, inspect it, make sure that it's actually coming from the person, that you're actually expecting it, that it's in context, and give it that 20-second pause. Same thing with your computers. Make sure that if you don't know who that computer belongs to, that you don't let it in. And then I'm going to jump right to our contact us page, and we can go to some Q&A. I want to make sure that we get that in for you guys. If you do have any questions, just drop them in the chat. If you'd like to get with our team and talk about your company's security, either doing a security risk assessment for ABA, we do them really inexpensively. They're like $197. It's a 1-hour call to open. We do the security risk assessment. All you have to do is the 1-hour call. We send you a link to click on 10 or so of your computers, up to 10, and then we do another about an hour and a half, 2-hour call after going over your gaps. So that will take care of your risk assessment that's required and your plan of action and milestones. And then that in combination with any kind of incremental progress, most of which you can do for very cheap or free in a lot of cases, start making progress down that road and at least get your business moved out of that tier 4 into the tier 1 or 2. And that's our process. So reach out to us if you have any questions about that. Yeah, any questions, or did you have anything, Michael, that you wanted to address specifically?
Well, I don't think I have anything else. I think that was a really awesome overview of HIPAA, IT compliance. Any questions in the chat, please feel free to put them in here, or there's contact information up on the slides. I know we're a little past the hour here, so please reach out to either Derek or me if you have any thoughts. We'll follow up with an email after this webinar, so you have both of our contact informations, a recording of this webinar so you can deep dive later and share with your team. But thanks so much, Derek, for your time and giving this amazing walkthrough. So much information. I learned so much, and I hope everybody else enjoyed it too. So thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.